The first signs of trouble came at precisely 0347 hours Greenwich Mean Time. Global detection systems lit up with unprecedented energy signatures that defied every known astronomical model. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, lead researcher at the Planetary Defense Initiative, was the first to recognize the magnitude of what was happening. The computer screens in the underground command center flickered with data streams that painted a terrifying picture. An alien invasion fleet was not just approaching, it was already within Earth's outer orbital zone. The Xeraxian Collective represented the pinnacle of technological advancement in their corner of the galaxy. Their civilization had conquered and subjugated over 217 different planetary systems, reducing most intelligent species to nothing more than footnotes in their expansive galactic archives. Their ships were living machines, grown rather than constructed, with biomechanical systems that could adapt and regenerate faster than any known technology. Admiral Krellex studied the preliminary scans of the blue-green planet with a mixture of boredom and contempt. Humanity appeared to be exactly like dozens of other primitive species they had encountered, fragmented, technologically limited, and utterly unprepared for true galactic warfare. The initial reconnaissance data suggested a civilization barely capable of exploring its own solar system, with rudimentary space exploration limited to a few robotic probes and occasional manned missions to a nearby moon. The invasion plan was devastatingly simple. 3 primary battle groups would approach from different vectors, creating an inescapable containment zone around the planet. Each group consisted of biomechanical motherships capable of deploying millions of combat units within minutes. Preliminary simulation models predicted total planetary submission within 6.3 standard galactic hours. In the command center beneath the Colorado Rocky Mountains, a team of international defense specialists watched the approaching fleet with a calm that would have surprised the Xeraxians. What appeared to be primitive surveillance equipment was actually a complex network of quantum-entangled sensors, advanced AI tracking systems, and distributed intelligence platforms that had been quietly developing for decades. Dr. Rodriguez turned to General Marcus Thompson, her fingers dancing across a holographic interface. "They think we're blind," she said quietly. "But we've been watching and preparing for this moment for years." The global defense network was anything but primitive. Hidden deep underground, in mountain complexes, oceanic research stations, and disguised facilities across continents, humanity had been preparing for this moment. Each major world power had contributed to a unified defense strategy that went far beyond traditional military thinking. Quantum computing clusters, advanced materials research, psychological warfare algorithms, and unconventional weapon systems had been developed in absolute secrecy. As the Xeraxian fleet approached, their initial scans revealed what they believed to be a defenseless planet. Massive motherships began to position themselves in strategic orbital locations, preparing for what they assumed would be a routine planetary conquest. Their biomechanical systems calculated probabilities of resistance with cold, mathematical precision. What they didn't understand was the human capacity for unexpected adaptation. In orbital tracking stations, military command centers, and distributed research facilities around the globe, teams of specialists began to activate protocols that had been decades in the making. The invasion would not be a simple conquest. It would be humanity's finest hour. Admiral Krellex reviewed the final approach coordinates, a slight vibration of satisfaction passing through the biomechanical interface of the command ship. "Initiate planetary submission protocols," he transmitted to the fleet. The words were spoken with the confidence of a species that had never known defeat. Little did the Xeraxians know that humanity had been preparing for this moment long before the first alien ship entered the solar system. Every scan, every projection, every assumption the aliens made was about to be spectacularly proven wrong. The invasion was moments away, and humanity was ready. The first Xeraxian dropships pierced Earth's atmosphere with an eerie precision, their biomechanical hulls glowing with energy that should have overwhelmed any primitive defensive systems. Massive craft descended over major population centers: New York, Beijing, Moscow, London, and São Paulo. Each ship carried thousands of combat units, designed to crush any resistance within minutes. What happened next would be recorded in Galactic history as the most miscalculated invasion in recorded history. In New York, a team of special operations soldiers emerged from what appeared to be ordinary subway maintenance tunnels. Their equipment was anything but ordinary. Quantum adaptive camouflage systems made them nearly invisible to the alien sensors. Experimental pulse rifles, developed in top-secret laboratories beneath the Mojave Desert, hummed with barely contained energy. Captain Jennifer Rodriguez led the Manhattan intervention team. Her earpiece crackled with a global communication network that the Xeraxians couldn't even detect. "Ground teams execute Phase 1, she whispered. Simultaneously across the globe, similar teams emerged from carefully prepared positions. Kulao, Beijing, underground research facilities that appeared to be mundane industrial complexes transformed into advanced defensive platforms. Electromagnetic shielding, developed through decades of classified research, flickered to life, creating invisible barriers that the alien technology couldn't penetrate. The first wave of Xeraxian ground units found themselves facing something entirely unexpected. Instead of panicked civilians or a disorganized military response, they encountered highly trained special forces units equipped with technology that bordered on the impossible. Pulse weapons that could disrupt biomechanical systems, adaptive nanite swarms that could reconfigure defensive strategies in microseconds, and quantum-encrypted communication networks that made their own communication systems look like primitive smoke signals. In Moscow, a team of cybersecurity experts had been preparing for this moment for years. As the first alien craft touched down, they unleashed a series of sophisticated digital attacks that began to compromise the invaders' communication and navigation systems. What looked like random interference was actually a carefully orchestrated digital assault designed to create maximum confusion. The Xeraxian combat units found their advanced targeting systems suddenly unreliable. Holographic decoys appeared and disappeared, creating impossible tactical scenarios. Military drones disguised as civilian infrastructure rose from hidden launch sites, attacking with precision that defied the aliens' understanding of warfare. Admiral Krelax watched the initial invasion reports with growing confusion. The probability models were collapsing. Every tactical projection suggested an overwhelming victory, yet the human resistance was not just holding. They were actively pushing back. In the Pacific, a series of underwater research stations that had long been disguised as simple oceanic monitoring platforms revealed their true purpose. Advanced electromagnetic pulse generators rose from the depths, creating interference fields that disrupted the alien ship's navigation and communication systems. The ocean itself became a weapon. The global response was a symphony of coordinated chaos. What the Xeraxians perceived as random actions were actually carefully planned tactical maneuvers. Military units from different countries, which had spent years training for this exact scenario, moved with a precision that suggested they had been preparing for this moment their entire lives. In Sao Paulo, a group of civilian scientists turned their research facilities into improvised weapon development centers. Experimental materials developed for seemingly innocuous purposes now became critical defensive technologies. Nanite-infused barriers could absorb and redirect energy weapons. Adaptive camouflage systems made entire city blocks disappear from alien sensors. By the end of the first 6 hours, the Xeraxian invasion force had lost over 40% of its ground units. Their advanced technology, which had conquered hundreds of civilizations, was being systematically neutralized by human ingenuity. Admiral Krelax felt something he had never experienced before: doubt. The invasion was supposed to be a simple planetary submission. Instead, humanity had transformed the entire planet into a living, breathing defensive system. Every civilian was a potential combatant. Every piece of infrastructure was a potential weapon. The Xeraxians had expected a quick victory. They were about to learn the true meaning of human resistance. Deep within a converted underground research facility in the Swiss Alps, a team of linguists, psychologists, and communication specialists worked with unprecedented intensity. Dr. Elena Kovalevskaya, a brilliant computational linguist, had spent her entire career studying complex communication systems. Now her work would determine the course of human survival. The Xyraxian communication network was a marvel of biomechanical engineering, a hierarchical system so rigid and predictable that it became its own greatest weakness. Each transmission followed strict protocols with information flowing through carefully mapped channels of authority. What the aliens considered a strength was about to become their most critical vulnerability. Dr. Kovalevsk's team began crafting transmission sequences designed to exploit every possible fracture in the alien communication infrastructure. They weren't just sending messages, they were creating a psychological warfare algorithm that would slowly unravel the Xyraxian command structure from within. The first wave of transmissions appeared to be nothing more than random noise. Buried within seemingly meaningless data, streams were carefully constructed psychological triggers. Each transmission was a precision-engineered piece of digital weaponry designed to create doubt, confusion, and internal conflict within the alien fleet. In the command centers of various global defense networks, specialists monitored the results. What looked like chaos to an outside observer was actually a meticulously planned psychological assault. Reports began to stream in from multiple invasion zones, showing increasingly erratic behavior among Xyraxian units. Aboard the primary Xyraxian mothership, communication officers began to experience unexplained anomalies. Minor disagreements escalated into heated exchanges. Strategic directives became muddled. The rigid hierarchical structure that had been the backbone of their military success now became a critical weakness. Simultaneously, human engineers were making breakthrough after breakthrough in technological adaptation. Every piece of captured alien technology became a learning opportunity. Research facilities around the globe worked in perfect synchronization, sharing data through quantum-encrypted networks that the aliens couldn't begin to comprehend. In a converted semiconductor factory in Shenzhen, a team of materials scientists discovered a method to reverse engineer the alien craft's outer membrane. What had appeared to be an impenetrable biomechanical skin could be disrupted by a carefully designed quantum frequency interference pattern. Within hours, the discovery was replicated and distributed to defense units worldwide. The psychological warfare reached its next phase. Dr. Kovalevsk's team began introducing subtle narrative elements into their transmissions, carefully crafted information that played on the Xyraxian collective psyche. They understood the aliens' weakness. A culture built on absolute certainty could be destroyed by introducing the smallest seeds of doubt. Reports from the invasion front became increasingly bizarre. Xyraxian combat units began to question their own mission. Some units outright refused to follow commands. The perfect, mathematically precise military machine was developing cracks. Admiral Krelix realized something was terribly wrong. The invasion that should have been a simple planetary submission was turning into a nightmare of unexpected complexity. Human resistance wasn't just physical, it was psychological, technological, and utterly unpredictable. In orbital research stations, human scientists continued their rapid adaptation. They weren't just defending, they were learning, evolving, transforming alien technology faster than the Xyraxians could respond. Captured alien communication devices were dismantled and rebuilt. Weapon systems were analyzed and reimagined. Breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A team of cognitive scientists discovered that the Xyraxian decision-making process was fundamentally different from human thinking. Where the aliens relied on pure computational logic, humans used intuition, creativity, and the ability to make seemingly illogical leaps of understanding. This became humanity's greatest weapon. By the end of the third day of invasion, the Xyraxian fleet was in complete disarray. What had begun as a simple planetary conquest had transformed into a fight for survival. The psychological warfare had worked beyond anyone's wildest expectations. Humanity had turned the aliens' greatest strengths into their most critical weaknesses. The invasion was no longer about military might. It had become a battle of consciousness, of adaptability, of the indefinable human spirit that no computational model could ever predict. The real war was just beginning. The United Nations Emergency. Session convened under circumstances no diplomatic body had ever imagined. Representatives from every nation sat in a reinforced underground facility, their faces illuminated by holographic displays showing real-time invasion data. The room buzzed with an energy that transcended historical rivalries and political divisions. Dr. Marcus Chen, the newly appointed Global Defense Coordinator, stood at the center of the room. His presentation was not about diplomatic niceties, but pure survival. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "we are no longer dealing with national conflicts. This is a species-level threat." The transformation was nothing short of miraculous. Countries that had been on the brink of war mere weeks ago now worked with unprecedented cooperation. China shared its advanced materials research with the United States. Russian cybersecurity experts collaborated with Indian technological teams. European Union resources were fully integrated with South American defense networks. Each continent became a carefully orchestrated front in a global defensive strategy. Africa's vast network of underground research facilities, long hidden from global view, suddenly revealed their true purpose. What had appeared to be simple mining and agricultural, research centers transformed into advanced technological hubs. Cutting-edge communication systems developed through decades of challenging environmental adaptations now became critical to global defense coordination. In the Pacific, a consortium of island nations demonstrated an ingenious defensive strategy. Their intimate knowledge of maritime environments and adaptive survival techniques translated into unprecedented defensive capabilities. Underwater communication networks, developed to protect against rising sea levels, now became a critical component of global resistance. The global response was more than just a military strategy. It was a comprehensive mobilization of human potential. Universities worldwide suspended normal operations. Every research facility, every technological resource was redirected toward a single goal: planetary defense. Young researchers who had been working on theoretical technologies suddenly found themselves at the forefront of humanity's survival. A graduate student's quantum entanglement research became a critical communication breakthrough, and environmental engineers' work on adaptive materials transformed defensive capabilities. The entire human knowledge base became a weapon. Supply chains were immediately reconfigured. Manufacturing facilities across the globe began producing experimental defensive technologies around the clock. What would have taken years in normal circumstances was now accomplished in days. 3D printing facilities, renewable energy plants, and advanced research centers worked in perfect synchronization. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, coordinating from the Global Command Center, watched in awe as humanity transformed before her eyes. The invasion had done what decades of diplomatic efforts could not: create a truly unified human response. Military strategists from different nations developed a distributed defense strategy that defied traditional warfare concepts. Instead of centralized command structures, they created a fluid, adaptive network. Each region could respond independently while maintaining perfect communication. If one area was compromised, the entire system could reconfigure instantaneously. The psychological impact was equally important. Global media platforms, instead of spreading panic, became channels of unified resistance. News broadcasts showed stories of human resilience, of communities coming together. The alien invasion had inadvertently created the most powerful human unity in recorded history. Cultural barriers dissolved. Language translation technologies developed for global communication now allowed real-time collaboration between teams from different parts of the world. A researcher in Brazil could instantly communicate with a colleague in Japan, sharing critical technological insights within seconds. Religious leaders, political figures, and community organizers delivered messages of hope and resistance. The narrative was no longer about individual nations or groups, but about humanity as a single unified entity. Space agencies from multiple countries combined their resources. Satellites were rapidly reconfigured into defensive and communication platforms. The International Space Station became a critical observation and coordination point, providing real-time data about the alien fleet's movements. By the end of the first week of invasion, the global response had transformed from a collection of national efforts into a singular, coordinated human resistance. The Xeraxian invasion had made a critical miscalculation. They had assumed humanity was fragmented and weak. Instead, they had awakened a sleeping giant. The real battle was just beginning, and humanity would face it not as separate nations, but as a single, unified species. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura, a brilliant geneticist working in a converted research facility in Hokkaido, had been studying the biomechanical signatures of the captured alien technology for less than 48 hours. What most researchers saw as an impenetrable technological marvel, he saw as an intricate biological puzzle waiting to be solved. His team had been working in complete isolation, their communication strictly controlled through quantum-encrypted channels. They understood the stakes. One small mistake could compromise the entire global defense strategy. Each researcher wore specialized protective gear that went far beyond traditional laboratory safety protocols. The key was in the aliens' biological-technological integration. The Xeraxian systems weren't purely mechanical or purely organic. They existed in a complex symbiosis that made them both incredibly powerful and unexpectedly vulnerable. Dr. Nakamura discovered a fundamental flaw in their genetic communication network, a microscopic weakness that could be exploited. Working alongside a global team of computational biologists, quantum engineers, and cybersecurity experts, they began developing a revolutionary virus. But this was no ordinary computer virus. It was a sophisticated genetic algorithm designed to attack the very essence of the Xeraxian technological infrastructure. The first test came unexpectedly. A damaged Xeraxian scout ship, captured during a previous engagement, provided the perfect testing ground. Dr. Nakamura's team carefully introduced their developed algorithm into the ship's biomechanical systems. The results were beyond their most optimistic projections. The virus didn't just disable technology, it began to transform it. It attacked the fundamental communication pathways of the alien systems, creating cascading failures that spread like a living organism. What had been a rigid, mathematically precise technological network began to break down from within. Global defense coordination centers watched in real time as the first infected Xeraxian systems began to fail. Communication networks collapsed. Defensive systems turned against themselves. The precise hierarchical structure of the alien technology became its greatest weakness. In orbit, entire squadrons of alien ships began to experience systemic failures. Their biomechanical navigation systems became confused, sending ships careening into each other. Weapon platforms that should have been instruments of planetary destruction now fired randomly, creating chaos within the alien fleet. The psychological impact was equally profound. The Xeraxians had never encountered a form of attack that could so fundamentally undermine their technological superiority. Their entire civilization was built on the premise of technological perfection. Now, that perfection was being systematically dismantled. Admiral Krellex watched in mounting horror as his fleet began to disintegrate. The probability models, which had always predicted absolute victory, now showed complete system failure. The human virus was more than a technological weapon. It was a living, evolving threat that adapted faster than any system could defend against. Research teams around the globe continued to refine the approach. What had begun as a targeted virus was now evolving into a comprehensive biological technological weapon. Each captured piece of alien technology became another opportunity to understand and exploit their systems. The virus worked on multiple levels. It attacked communication networks, created internal conflicts within the alien command structure, and began to reprogram the very biological components of their technology. Ships that were once living machines now turned against their creators. Most critically, the human approach was fundamentally different from the alien technological paradigm. Where the Xeraxians saw technology as a precise, unchanging system, humans approached it as a living, adaptive organism. Each failure became a learning opportunity. Each setback was transformed into a new avenue of attack. By the end of the week, Nearly 60% of the Zyraxian invasion fleet had been compromised. Ships that had once represented the pinnacle of technological advancement now drifted helplessly in orbit, their systems turned into nothing more than complex metallic tombs. The global research team celebrated quietly. They understood that this was more than a technological victory. It was a fundamental reimagining of how intelligence could interact with technology. The Zyraxians had come to conquer, believing in their technological superiority. They were about to learn the true meaning of human innovation. The tide of the invasion had not just turned, it had been completely transformed. Admiral Krellick stood motionless on the command deck of the primary mothership, his biomechanical interfaces flickering. With unprecedented uncertainty, the human resistance had defied every computational model, every strategic projection that had guided the Zyraxian collective for millennia. What was happening was impossible, and yet it was happening. The communication networks that had once been the pride of the Zyraxian fleet now transmitted nothing but confusion. Where once there had been crystal-clear hierarchical transmissions, now there were fragments of data that made no logical sense. Conflicting directives, impossible tactical scenarios, psychological interference that seemed to attack the very core of their collective consciousness. Human communication specialists had done more than just disrupt alien systems. They had attacked the fundamental way the Zyraxians understood reality. The Zyraxian civilization had never encountered a species that fought with such complete disregard for established warfare protocols. Every battle they had fought across the galaxy had followed predictable patterns. Civilizations would assess the technological disparity, recognize the overwhelming superiority of Zyraxian forces, and surrender. Resistance was always calculated, always rational. Humanity was anything but rational. What the aliens interpreted as chaos was actually the most sophisticated form of warfare they had ever encountered. Each seemingly random action was part of a broader, more complex strategy that their computational minds couldn't comprehend. The humans were fighting with emotion, with creativity, with an unpredictability that broke every known rule of conflict. Psychological profiles captured during the initial invasion stages revealed something terrifying to the Zyraxian command. Humans didn't just resist. They transformed resistance into an art form. A small group of defenders would use tactics that should have been statistically impossible. They would sacrifice individual units to create broader strategic advantages that defied mathematical modeling. One captured communication transmission became a pivotal moment of understanding. A human military commander was heard telling his team, "We don't need to win by their rules, we need to change the entire game." This concept was fundamentally incomprehensible to the Zyraxian collective consciousness. Their entire civilization was built on precise mathematical models. Every decision, every strategic move was calculated with quantum-level precision. The idea that a species would intentionally introduce unpredictability as a strategic advantage was beyond their comprehension. Worse still, the humans seemed to derive psychological strength from situations that should have been demoralizing. Each setback became an opportunity. Each loss transformed into a learning experience. The more the Zyraxians attacked, the more unified and resilient human resistance became. Captured communication logs showed something unprecedented. While Zyraxian units communicated in precise, emotionless data streams, human communication was filled with emotional support, humor, and an inexplicable concept the aliens couldn't translate: hope. Military units would share jokes in the midst of combat. Researchers would celebrate small breakthroughs with displays of genuine emotion. When one part of their defense was compromised, other units would immediately reorganize, showing an adaptability that seemed to defy all logical strategic models. The virus developed by human scientists had done more than disable technological systems. It had introduced a form of entropy into the Zyraxian collective consciousness. Doubt began to spread faster than any technological failure. For the first time in their recorded history, the Zyraxian collective experienced something akin to fear. Admiral Krellick realized the fundamental error in their invasion strategy. They had approached Earth as they had approached hundreds of other planetary systems, as a mathematical problem to be solved. Humanity was not a problem to be calculated. They were a living, breathing, constantly evolving challenge that refused to be contained by any known computational model. The invasion was no longer about technological superiority. It had transformed into a battle of consciousness, of adaptability, of the indefinable human spirit that no algorithmic projection could ever predict. As the Zyraxian fleet began to disintegrate from within, Admiral Krellex understood a terrifying truth. Humanity was not just fighting back. They were rewriting the entire understanding of warfare, of intelligence, of survival itself. The real invasion had never been about conquering a planet. It had been about understanding a species that was fundamentally incomprehensible. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter became the stage for humanity's most audacious military operation in history. What the Zyraxian fleet saw as a potential defensive position would become their ultimate trap. Commander Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the globally coordinated defense platform, her eyes fixed on the holographic display. Months of preparation had led to this moment. Every research facility, every military installation, every technological resource humanity possessed was now focused on a single, complex strategy. The plan was elegant in its complexity. Human scientists had spent weeks studying the gravitational dynamics of the asteroid belt. They understood something the Zyraxians did not. Space was not just a battlefield, but a weapon waiting to be wielded. Quantum-powered gravitational manipulators, developed in secret research facilities around the globe, began to activate. These were not simple weapons, but sophisticated systems that could reshape the very fabric of spacetime within the asteroid belt. Each manipulator was a marvel of human engineering, combining insights from quantum physics, astronomical research, and cutting-edge computational modeling. The first phase began subtly. Asteroids that had existed in stable orbits for millions of years suddenly began to shift. Their trajectories changed with mathematical precision, creating a complex dance of celestial bodies that defied traditional understanding of orbital mechanics. Admiral Krellex watched in growing confusion. The human approach made no tactical sense by any known military standard. Asteroids were being positioned in patterns that seemed random, yet there was an underlying complexity that his computational systems couldn't quite decode. What the Zyraxians didn't realize was that each asteroid was being prepared as a potential weapon. The gravitational manipulators could transform these space rocks into guided projectiles with pinpoint accuracy. More importantly, they could create gravitational fields that would render alien ship systems completely ineffective. Electromagnetic pulse generators, hidden within strategically positioned asteroids, began to activate. These were not conventional weapons, but advanced systems that could create localized disruption fields capable of neutralizing the most advanced alien technological defenses. The human fleet was nowhere to be seen. This was intentional. Instead of traditional military confrontation, humanity had transformed the entire asteroid belt into a single, massive weapon system. Zyraxian ships began to experience systematic failures. Navigation systems became unreliable. Communication networks collapsed. The precise, mathematically calculated formations that had conquered hundreds of planetary systems now became death traps. Some asteroids were equipped with advanced quantum entanglement communication systems. They could transmit targeted psychological warfare signals directly into the alien ship systems. Where traditional weapons failed, these systems attacked the very consciousness of the alien technological infrastructure. Commander Rodriguez watched as the complex plan unfolded. Each movement was the result of months of preparation, of global collaboration that transcended traditional military thinking. This was not just a battle, it was a comprehensive reimagining of space warfare. 13. Gravitational manipulators began their most complex phase. Entire sections of the asteroid belt could now be reshaped in milliseconds. Asteroid trajectories became fluid, creating a three-dimensional battlefield that constantly changed. Ships that thought they were maneuvering to attack found themselves suddenly surrounded, their escape routes constantly shifting. Electromagnetic pulse waves created corridors of technological destruction. Alien ships that attempted to escape found themselves caught in carefully prepared gravitational traps. What appeared to be random asteroid movements were actually precisely calculated defensive and offensive positions. Admiral Krelix realized too late the true nature of human strategy. This was not a traditional battle. This was a comprehensive systemic attack that targeted every possible avenue of alien resistance. The final phase came with brutal efficiency. The gravitational manipulators reached their full potential. Entire sections of the asteroid belt could now be reshaped instantaneously. Asteroid fragments became weapons. Gravitational fields became barriers. The very fabric of space became a weapon against the Zyraxian fleet. In less than 3 hours, over 70% of the alien invasion force was destroyed, not through conventional warfare, but through a comprehensive strategy that redefined the very concept of planetary defense. Humanity had not just defended itself, it had demonstrated a level of strategic thinking that would be remembered across the galaxy. The asteroid belt fell silent, save for the scattered remnants of what was once the most powerful invasion fleet in known space. The silence following the destruction of the Zyraxian invasion fleet was deafening. In research facilities, military command centers, and civilian gathering spaces around the globe, humanity collectively exhaled. The threat that had seemed insurmountable mere weeks ago was now nothing more than scattered debris in the solar system. Dr. Elena Rodriguez sat in the Global Command Center, her hands trembling slightly as the full magnitude of their victory began to sink in. The cost had been immense. Cities damaged, millions displaced, but humanity had survived. More than survived, they had thrived in the face of absolute destruction. The first galactic communications began to trickle in. Other spacefaring civilizations, who had long watched the Zyraxian collective with a mixture of fear and resignation, now turned their attention to Earth with newfound respect. The quantum communication networks, developed during the invasion, now became humanity's first true interstellar communication platform. Diplomatic teams worked around the clock to analyze and translate the incoming transmissions. What they discovered was both terrifying and fascinating. The Zyraxian collective was not just defeated, they were fundamentally broken. The psychological and technological assault had exposed critical weaknesses in their civilization that would take generations to repair. Research teams began to compile the comprehensive data from the invasion. Every piece of captured alien technology became a learning opportunity. Universities worldwide suspended normal operations as the greatest technological windfall in human history was carefully dissected and understood. The global cooperation that had emerged during the invasion didn't disappear. If anything, it became stronger. Nations that had been historical rivals now worked with unprecedented unity. The shared experience of near-total destruction had transformed human civilization in ways no diplomatic effort had ever managed. Interstellar intelligence. Reports suggested that humanity was now viewed very differently by other spacefaring civilizations. The Zyraxians had been considered the most advanced and feared military force in their region of the galaxy. Their complete defeat by a supposedly primitive species sent shockwaves through extraterrestrial political systems. Dr. Marcus Chen, now heading the newly formed Interstellar Diplomatic Commission, understood the delicate position humanity now occupied. "We're not just a defended planet anymore," he told a gathered group of international representatives. "We're a signal to the universe about what humanity represents." The technological breakthroughs were unprecedented. The gravitational manipulation technologies developed during the defense could revolutionize space travel. The quantum communication systems opened up possibilities for interstellar communication that had previously been impossible. Even the virus developed to counter the Zyraxian systems held potential for medical and technological applications beyond warfare. Psychological studies revealed something profound about human nature. The invasion had brought out the best of human potential: creativity, adaptability, unity, and an inexplicable ability to transform seemingly insurmountable challenges into opportunities for growth. Global memorial services honored those who, had fallen. But these were not services of mourning. They were celebrations of human resilience. Each ceremony became a testament to the species' ability to unite, to adapt, to overcome. The remaining fragments of Xyraxian technology became the most studied objects in human history. Research facilities around the globe worked to understand every microscopic detail. What had been an instrument of potential destruction was now becoming a key to understanding advanced technological possibilities. Diplomatic communications from other alien civilizations began to arrive. Some were messages of congratulations. Others were carefully worded inquiries about humanity's technological capabilities. A few were clearly diplomatic attempts to establish potential alliances or trade relationships. The first interstellar human ambassadors were selected not from traditional diplomatic circles but from the diverse teams that had been critical to the planet's defense. Scientists, military strategists, communication experts, individuals who represented the true depth of human potential. Dr. Rodriguez reflected on the journey. Humanity had been tested in the most extreme possible way and had not just survived, they had redefined the very concept of survival. The invasion had revealed something fundamental about the human species. When faced with absolute destruction, they didn't just resist, they transformed. The scattered remnants of the Xyraxian fleet served as a permanent reminder. Floating in the asteroid belt, they were a monument to human resilience, to the power of unity, to a spirit that refused to be defined by traditional limitations. Humanity had entered the invasion as a collection of separate nations. They emerged as a unified species, ready to take its place among the stars.